Jesus freak here. In this world we live in, a lot of people think, I guess, that, a soundbite answer is enough for a very complicated situation. I don't like to have that mindset myself. You see, reality isn't that simple. A lot of the opinions I have are not as simple as you'd think they are. You could ask me about my opinion on this and that, and I'll give you a very complicated opinion. For example, you'll notice it very rarely in my videos will I use anything but a KJV. And I say that I think that the main Bible used in church, used in Bible studies, etc., should be the King James. And yet I'm holding a New King James in my hand, and I'm holding an ESV in my other hand. See, I don't have an issue with the existence of alternative translations. Provided, what they're understood to be is alternatives. You see, I'll readily admit that the KJV has its flaws. Most of these flaws are actually in the Old Testament, so it's not that big a deal. Because they don't destroy the message or anything. If it's the product of human work, human labor, it's going to have imperfections because humans are imperfect. I am one of those people who says that inspiration is to the autographer, but that inspiration holds to the text so far as it's transmitted faithfully from generation to generation, from copy to copy. And there isn't that much of a difference. Most of the issues are going to be New Testament issues. That's 5% at most. Between the most corrupt texts and the Textus Receptus. Now, I'm not Textus Receptus strictly. You'll notice that in several places I'll say that some other reading, be it a Byzantine reading, be it a Western reading, is superior to the Textus Receptus. Several cases of this in Revelation, for example. So my answers are going to be more complicated than, Textus Receptus is the best, or, the Latin Vulgate is the best, or whatever. All the tools we have their uses. Some are more useful than others. Some of them, their main use is to show us that they're not useful. Like that literal piece of dumpster trash known as Codex Sinaiticus. Or Codex Bezae Canabriensis. Or Codex Vaticanus. We know these are dumpster fire material. But a complex reality doesn't run on simple answers. I've said several times, I actually like the RSV. I just wish that it weren't based on a Nestle-Aland text. The version of Nestle-Aland they used, I think it was like Nestle-Aland 18 or some really old version of that. When I did my own translation, like the King James, I used a mix of Textus Receptus and the Vulgate. It was still a Clementine Vulgate. Although my Textus Receptus was Erasmus rather than Beza. Could I have used Beza? If I had access to it at the time, yeah, probably could. I do have access to Beza now. He translated the New Testament into Latin. I can use that as a reference. I think there's actually some advantages to me having used Erasmus instead of Beza. For example, the issue of Revelation 16:5, I think it is. You'll say, the answer to whether the Textus Receptus says as Ohosios or Oisomenos is actually a fairly complicated one. It isn't as simple as it says as Oisomenos, because that's what the King James has as its Vorlage. It's not that simple. Because if you're going to look at Stephanus, if you're going to look at Erasmus, I don't know what Elzevir has. I've never seen Elzevir's text. It's going to say Ohosios. Beza's first editions are going to say Ohosios too. I've seen them. I believe I actually handled one in the flesh. It was this earlier edition of Beza. But his later versions changed it. And he explained why he did that. Basically, it summed up to every other time he had who is and who was, the next part would be who is to be. And so he fixed the text to match every other situation. Of course, Revelation is a really confusing text. It could definitely be that it was intended to be different. And I argue that that change was actually kind of presumptuous. Like I said, simple answers don't work in a complicated world, complicated reality. Some of my answers on hard political topics will be, if you ask me what I believe, are you asking me as a person, or are you asking me as a Christian? Because sometimes the answer will be different. I like to give, Jack Kevorkian as an example. As a person, I'd say, oh, what he probably did out of sympathy. But as a Christian, I have to say, oh, he's a murderer. And that he helped send people to hell. See, reality is very complicated and very nuanced, and I have to understand this. I'm 41. I've lived a lot of my life. I've seen a lot of things. And I've come to understand that you can't give a simple answer to a complex question. Jesus, freak out.